What if I told you that a quiet island covered in ice has just changed the power dynamics between the US, Canada, and Europe, maybe forever? That while Trump was shouting about taking Greenland, Canada was already mining its way to geopolitical victory. Sounds like a thriller, right? But this is real-world politics playing out in the Arctic. Today, we're diving deep into how Canada, along with its European partners, pulled off a $3 billion economic power move right under Washington's nose, and what it means for global alliances, rare earth minerals, and the future of Arctic sovereignty. Buckle up. This one's big. Trump's Greenland obsession. Let's rewind. After Donald Trump's re-election in November 2024, he made a speech filled with bold promises, many of them symbolic. Among them, the idea of incorporating Greenland into the United States. Yes, Greenland, the same icy territory Trump tried to buy back in 2019. This time, he wasn't joking. By early 2025, Trump was again demanding control, shouting to Congress, "We will annex Greenland one way or another." What pushed him to double down? Two old U.S. documents were pulled off the shelves, the Eisenhower-era Arctic Gap Protocol and an outdated Cold War radar modernization draft. These pointed to Greenland not just as a snowy wasteland, but as a critical military blind spot and a gold mine of rare minerals. According to defense analysts, this reveals the U.S. is increasingly worried about both military vulnerabilities and being left out of the next rare earth boom. Greenland's strategic importance. Why Greenland, though? Because beneath all that ice lies a treasure chest. 38 billion tons of rare earth metals. 17 billion barrels of Arctic oil. Graphite, zirconium, niobium. The works. And these aren't just numbers. They're crucial for the tech, defense, and energy sectors. Think about it. Molybdenum, for example, is essential in hypersonic weapons, nuclear reactors, and EV heat-resistant parts. Without it, industries stall. Experts argue this could lead to a new Cold War-style arms race in the Arctic. If Greenland controls detection gaps and critical resources, then whoever partners with it has a serious strategic advantage. Greenland says no. But here's the twist. Greenland is not for sale. In a joint March 12, 2025 statement, Greenland's autonomous government and Denmark firmly rejected Trump's claims. Their message was clear. Sovereignty isn't negotiable. Even NATO was put on alert. The statement warned that coercion from one NATO member against another could destabilize the alliance itself. There's a belief among political scientists that such pressure could fracture NATO unity. If internal threats begin to outweigh external ones, the Arctic could become a wedge issue dividing the West, especially if European members feel Washington's approach is reckless. Canada enters the scene. While Trump made headlines, Canada quietly made moves. Two relatively small Canadian companies, Greenland Resources Inc. and Amaroq Minerals, secured a $3 billion mining agreement with Greenland and Denmark, funded largely by the European Investment Bank. Let's break that down. Greenland Resources had been quietly mining molybdenum in Ontario. With rising demand in Europe for cleaner steel, they pivoted north and struck a deal backed by EU green funds and Danish credit. Amaroq Minerals, a gold exploration firm, revived an old mine project in southern Greenland. Their funding came from a blend of British pension funds, Norwegian wealth money, and even some quiet U.S. equity firms. According to economists, this deal shows how Canada plays the long game. By leading with environmental and human rights compliance, something Trump's approach lacked, they won trust and capital. And it's possible this strategy may set the new gold standard for international resource agreements in politically sensitive regions. Canada's Arctic game plan. This wasn't just business. Canada played a geopolitical chess move. Ottawa framed the deal as a buffer strategy, not just protecting its own Arctic interests, but stabilizing the region. They've been quietly building what some call the Arctic Hexagon. Mining in Baffin Island, rocket tracking on Elmer Island, spaceports on Devon Island, and now mining in Greenland. Geostrategists say this could become Canada's version of a soft power Arctic shield. Instead of military bases, it's using spaceports, research, and green mining projects to gain influence. And here's the kicker. By aligning with Europe instead of the US, Greenland's economy now has access to EU infrastructure funding, while keeping its autonomy. There is a version that suggests this may push other small nations or territories to align with middle powers like Canada rather than superpowers, especially when the former offers money without strings and the latter brings threats. US misses out. Meanwhile, Washington is feeling the heat. Molybdenum suddenly jumped from medium to high risk on the US critical metals list. Why? Because now it's flowing to Europe. Defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon say shortages could delay hypersonic weapons and nuclear tech schedules. And get this, while Trump pushes for control, American private investors are already funding the Canadian firms mining in Greenland. According to supply chain experts, this shows a disconnect. U.S. capital is chasing global opportunities, while its government sticks to control-based politics. This could also weaken the Inflation Reduction Act's effectiveness, which ties EV tax breaks to U.S. battery material sources. Without molybdenum, certain high-strength parts may need to be imported, ironically, from Canadian EU projects. NATO tensions and Arctic politics. The fallout is visible. Trump's rhetoric triggered backlash even in Congress. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska warned that any military move would destroy the fragile Arctic environment and push allies away. European nations like France doubled down on support for Greenland. President Macron pledged an airport and sent a nuclear sub to patrol near Baffin Bay under a monitoring mission. Poland stayed silent, not wanting to upset the U.S., while Norway firmly stood by Denmark. There is an opinion that if Trump pushes harder, it could create a permanent fracture between NATO's Arctic and mainland members. Canada and the EU might end up forming parallel defense or economic pacts, limiting U.S. access to northern infrastructure. Greenland's economic shift. In July 2025, Greenland passed a game-changing bill called Infrastructure FOLIC, raising local labor quotas to 70% and requiring 10% of profits to fund future generations. This isn't just politics, it's a sovereignty move. The fund is modeled after New Zealand's Maori-inspired models and aims to ensure long-term economic independence. Canadian companies accepted these terms. But U.S. companies? Not so eager. Analysts suggest this could create a standard for ethical resource extraction worldwide, where countries demand more equity, jobs, and profit sharing. And those unwilling to play by those rules? Left out. Add to that, Canadian firm Cedar Energy is now exploring LNG projects in Disco Bay, backed by Europe. After Trump made LNG exports unpredictable, European buyers are happy to switch pipelines away from Washington. There's a theory that this could permanently shift European energy policy, especially Germany's, as they look to Arctic gas over American supplies. So, what's really happening here? While Trump focused on flags and speeches, Canada focused on contracts and coalitions. Greenland is no longer for sale. It's building its future through alliances, green investments, and strict regulations. The Arctic is becoming a diplomatic battlefield, and it looks like Canada and Europe are currently ahead. There's growing belief among international policy experts that middle powers like Canada are now shaping global order, not by might, but by multilateralism, environmental standards, and financial diplomacy. So next time someone says geopolitics is only about superpowers, remind them, sometimes the quiet players with the right tools can win the loudest games. What do you think? Could this be the start of a new kind of Cold War, but driven by economics and climate instead of missiles? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay ahead of the game. Thanks for watching.